4:33, we'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded, both audio and video, for broadcast and possible use in a future date. If you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm sure that we'll duly note that. Is the here in the flag? Yeah. Obviously address that.
Beyond that.
Okay, thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the meeting minutes for August 16th as they were distributed? If so, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have the first by Beth. I have a second. And seconded by Mr. Lamattina. All in favor? It is unanimous. OPM report, August 2022. John, you're up.
Thank you. For this evening's OPM report, we do have a lot to cover this evening, but my portion of the meeting will be relatively brief. This last report that you saw, there was a small update to the amount encumbered on the project, $34,200. That's for the budget amount for environmental site that we're now reflecting on the total encumbered value for the project. We do have a couple of invoices that have come in for environmental and site services. One came in and is reflected on this report, and then the next was came in during the month of September. So I do want to remind the committee that we do tend to show a 30-day approximately lag on the reporting. So invoices that came in through the course of September will show up on the next month's report. We do continue to track that our budget versus invoices is on track, so our burn rate is good. No overages to report as of today. Future meeting and submission dates. Just remind this committee that we do plan to submit the PD report to the MSBA on October 21st. So I believe at the last meeting, what we had discussed as a game plan was we're going to prepare a draft for this committee to review by October the 4th. We would have a week to review. On the 11th, we would reconvene and we would either discuss any additions, amendments needed. We can address those in the week following, but if it were the case that there were no substantial changes, we could approve that report on the 11th. But if needed, we could reconvene the following Tuesday, I think that's the 18th, and approve the report then for submission. If that sounds consistent with what was discussed at the last meeting, that will be the plan going forward.
I believe that is consistent to a T. Actually, anybody have any discussion or any questions on that timeline? Our next meeting would be the 4th. I'm sorry, Mr. Gale.
Yeah, just to confirm, you said the submission is the 21st?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So again, we can prepare a draft. The committee to this point has seen a lot of the materials already, but we'll compile them in one document for the committee to review. You have about a week to look at it offline. We'll meet on, the 11th. It could be that we could approve the report that evening, depending on what the comments, questions, and changes are. And in that event, we wouldn't need to meet on the 18th. But we'll hold both meetings tentatively as of tonight.
Okay. And when you're sending the information on the 4th, just as a reminder, any comments or questions about that to reply directly back to Mr. Bates and not to the entire committee, so we're not deliberating.
Right. Correct.
And can I steal this slot a little bit for, I know we have some discussion at our community forum.
Sure.
And if we jump around a little bit as far as future meeting dates and times. I know we've had some discussions, and I tried to contact some other folks that have been on other building committees. And one thing I want to bring toward the committee is the community involvement is going to be the most important part of this project being approved by the town. At the same time, we have two separate roads that we're going down. One is these meetings that are more of a business meeting, and we do make decisions. And the other is more of an informational gathering and the give and take with the community in the community forums. And from everyone I've spoken to, communities address that by having a multitude of these community forums. So it's a presentation to bring people exactly up to date as to where everything is, and then for them to be able to have a good give and take in questions. There are some things that the community can most definitively influence as far as where we're going, but it does fall on this committee's shoulders to make the ultimate decisions. I don't know if there's any additional discussions about this. We most definitively want to have as many community forums as needed, perhaps even more than what this committee is going to be meeting. So that way there, people can have greater access as far as time, date, and also be very current in information, along with keeping up to date if they can make these meetings, if they can watch on cable, to stay informed, or even click on the little scan it, which I'm going to take a shot here, is hopefully fixed at this point in time.
It is.
It works. I tested it.
It works. Okay. Any further questions, discussions, or do any folks want to have any input?
Are you asking specifically about meeting times?
Meeting times, dates, for the forums themselves. We need you guys. Without you guys, this isn't going to happen. So we want to make it as quick and as easy as possible and keep you as informed as possible. Beth, and then...
Yeah, so I know they talked about, making the time later. The problem is, this committee took a long time to figure out what time everybody could make it here in this committee. And so it's tough to, again, now revamp and try to find times that people can, again, if we have to change times of this committee. The forums, fine, I don't have a problem with that. I'm worried about the ability of people to come to the meetings at the time.
And the committee itself in our meetings, we batted our heads around.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the time and the place that pretty much we can all meet.
Yes.
So that wouldn't change, but I'm talking about for the community forums. Because we want people's inputs.
Absolutely.
And I would encourage as many people from our own committee as possible, if you can make a forum, to please go. It may be a little bit repetitious at times, but at least you get to hear what people are thinking at the same time. And that, I think, is the most important part.
It was not the community forum times that was an issue with this particular meeting.
It was this time.
The forums are really just
Could
informational. Honestly, the decision making is these meetings. So these are better for community members to attend. At 4:30 is just a difficult time. So that was what was expressed in the forum.
Yeah, and it is duly noted, we've gone round and round to accommodate different members of this committee. I just don't see any other days or times that we can just make it work. It's, everyone's pigeonholed, so to speak, when you start looking at the long term. If you could come up so we could, I want the microphone to be able to capture you, and I assume there's one up there.
So are there decisions being made in the document that is about to be submitted prior to the next community forum?
Yep, we'll be getting that report on the 4th that we'll be looking at. Now, that's not to say that we can't schedule a forum in between.
I think it's essential that you do, and if you can't, I do hope that there will be some time for community input at this meeting.
Well, we are going to be very structured as far as what MSBA allows us to do. It's their timeline that we have to conform to. But folks, are you thinking that we could perhaps have something in the interim once the preliminary submission is?
I do want to just kind of be clear on what we are going to be voting
She
to
thinks
approve
we
at
made
the
a
next
decision.
meeting. It's not
No, she's talking
the
about.
PDP report, which is the next submission in October, is really it's documenting existing conditions largely. It's also documenting the work that the administration has done in their space planning. We're not picking a building type. We're not picking grade configuration.
Not about the scope of the project at
No,
this point.
no, that is not the case here. This is a preliminary report that we submit to the state, and it's largely just documenting existing, as I mentioned.
Thank you.
That's different.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to add on to what John was saying, is that the next community forum is November or October.
November
November
7th. November 7th.
So at that point, okay, scratch that. I had to scratch that comment.
If people go to the community forum on November 7th and input is provided and we speak up and express our opinions, is that taken as heavily or as seriously as it would be at this meeting? Or is that more of just a discussion and might be forgotten, might not have any impact?
I wouldn't say it's going to be forgotten and not taken seriously at all. I would say it's taken very seriously because it's a community building. It's not our building. It's it's all of us. It's our building. You're just as much a part of it. There are certain things that will weigh into different things that have to be conformed to, such as space size, class size, the width of a hallway, things of that nature. That's why we have our professionals to be able to handle and do that. As far as the color of a brick or some of the other decisions when we get to them. Absolutely. Everyone will be involved and input will be duly noted. I would be shocked if there's ever a forum that you don't have at least 2 members, if not more, from this committee watching and being there and being available, so they can hear what's going on.
There were definitely a lot of people there from the committee at the community forum, and I certainly appreciate that and respect that. I guess I just want to make sure that if we're being told this isn't going to change and people can't make it to this meeting, that there is ample opportunity for people to be heard.
These are the guys you want to give your comments to. And not to point fingers at them, but they're the ones who are, making the soup. They're shopping for the groceries.
But it's you guys that make the decisions, and we want to make sure that.
But the success of this project as a whole is entirely dependent on the community and what they want. So by all means, feedback from you folks is very, very important. We're going to do everything we can to document it, and it's one of our primary goals here.
Thank you.
All right, now that I've hijacked your...
Well, I'm close to completing my portion of the agenda. Just wanted to, we've already discussed. The next community forum will be held on November 7th at 6:30 at the middle school. We also would like to put another community forum on the calendar before the end of the year. We are looking at early December. I will leave it up to this group to finalize a date. It doesn't have to be now, but we did want to put that out there for discussion.
And then we're somewhat on cruise control until we get toward the next submission date.
On March is when
And
we
also have the meeting with MSBA and they give us their feedback on our preliminary, correct?
That's right. That's right.
So, just so everyone's aware of that as well. So, the following steps will happen. We will do the preliminary submission. That will go to MSBA. MSBA will get with us in, is it December? I'm trying to remember their timeline. They've got the date, MSBA, of when they wanted to meet with us for the preliminary submission. And
For the PDP, that would just be a response via the email that we wouldn't be meeting with them at that point. No.
okay, so we'll get that back. I think it would be prudent to have the results of that for our next community forum. So we could,
Sure.
have that and be able to share that with folks.
Yep.
Then it's gearing up toward the actual submittal,
Right.
which will happen in March, correct?
Right, that's right. That's right.
And that's the interim between there, and that's when this committee will be making some decisions at that point. And, you will, obviously, will step up the forms as well.
Absolutely. So that concludes the OPM's portion of the agenda. And with that, I can turn it over to AI3.
John, I have one question. When the PDP is submitted, that response, what question is, and can you just explain what that answer will, not what the answer will be, but what we can expect to hear back from MSB? The decision that they're making based on the PDP submission.
They won't be making any decisions at that point. It's really just offering feedback on the report. And this is a large document, a lot of technical information, and they're just going to provide by literally a written Word document, just general feedback, things that they'd like us to look at. But there won't be no decision making of any kind on the part of the MSBA at that phase. It's really more of just a technical exercise of reviewing. That's all it is, reviewing of the document. And again, that document is largely existing conditions information. The design team has done a very thorough analysis of the existing building, and also, of course, the space summaries through their meetings with the commission.
I think what some people may be wondering is at what point and who makes the decision on an addition, a renovation, or a rebuild?
Would not be happening at this phase. That would be coming in after the new year, is when during the PSR phase. So, as the chairman said, we're sort of on cruise control through the end of the year as it relates to that.
Okay.
And John,
Yes.
at the next community forum, you'll let the community know those pieces so that those decision-making, the month, so after the first of the year, the community will know that at this forum in February, the decisions will be made in March, April,
Yeah,
May. Okay.
you're right, Mr. Superintendent. I think we should have a clear outline of the schedule going forward so the community's aware.
Thanks, John.
We'll touch on that on the last slide.
Thanks. Figured you would, Troy. Thanks.
Go with your thunder. Okay, so you're all set, and we will turn everything over to AI3 at this point. Actually, we have in the interim the lease of the Whitman Middle that's on there is we might as well take that in order. And Mr. Lyman, do you have an update for us, I believe?
Yes, we've looked at the parcels as in plural that make up the middle school. Traditionally, towns tend to consolidate parcels on their tax records, but they remain individual parcels deeded to the town. The inclusion of all the lots into a single submission is likely going to cause a lot of turmoil. It's my suggestion that we look at the 9-acre parcel that the front of the building and the area in front of it is on, and identify that as the primary building lot. That will eliminate issues related to the secondary parcel and the fields, which, by the way, we can't find a deed to. It's kind of amazing if you think about it, but we've done a lot of research, and so far we have not been able to identify the instrument that gave us that lot.
Was it Boy Scouts?
No, it's further west. So it could lead to a lot of complications. If we're able to utilize the 9.5 acre lot, that as you come in off Clothell Avenue, you see, that would make, and of course we have, would be a lot lot similar.
And that goes behind the school?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I think that was one of the cones that had been identified as a portion. So obviously we need to go with the architects, et cetera, but.
Right. So, yeah, I just have a question. So you keep talking about the front of the building, but you also mean the back, on those fields?
Yeah, it actually, the lot would split in the middle of the building, coming in. So from that point forward, going west.
So you've seen the cone pictures, have you seen the pictures of that? Would that be okay?
I presume it would be. The space that we would gain from demolishing the existing school would then be recuperated
As fields.
As fields.
Yeah.
Can you guys put that slide up? I don't see a number on it, but it's
Down on
preliminary evaluation of options 2A.
Is that one of the, one to go over there?
Well, there's no column there, but
Oh, you want that?
this just shows the middle school and
Go back to the last slide.
Yeah, that's, he's got that.
Probably not on this.
Probably not on this one.
okay.
Yeah, that's why. That's
So the area that you're speaking to, so coming there, so there's the front of the middle school. So it would be there and back there.
Is there, by chance, a document that would describe the delineation? That defines that zone?
Yes, it would be on the deed, yes.
Yeah.
It would be the markings that identify the parcel.
Cool.
On there. Right.
Yep. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Gavin.
Yeah, so I'm just to kind of go a little further on that. It was my understanding that there was some concerns over the wording of the MSBA lease. So with in the way the fields are aligned, what you're saying is if we identify a certain parcel, would we then be able to use the MSBA lease and the town would
Yes.
be acceptable to that?
I believe so, yes.
So,
Yeah,
I have a question.
I do too.
You live there, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I just need some clarification. So, we had an issue with the fields and a lease potentially because they used to be, you own them, we lease the school. So now we have an issue that says if we just use the existing school and behind it, we have that lease parcel.
That's correct.
But on the outside of that, which encompassed everything else that's currently there, we can no longer, after research, find that deed?
The deed that covers this parcel
Yeah,
cannot be identified.
okay. So it could potentially be
Not
school
saying it
district?
can't be, we've spent 2 weeks searching.
Sure.
And so far have been unable to identify how it came into our hands. But it predated everyone in this room.
Well played.
So if
So
we
that's
had,
okay. So what we have there is okay?
If it's acceptable to MSBA, I believe it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Because it takes those fields out of contention.
The baseball fields.
Yep.
Yep.
And it takes the front field out of contention as well. I believe it's 9.5 acres.
they have a lease for 9.5 acres. That's it.
We're okay?
We don't have to go back and forth about other fields, et cetera, and then we have to figure out within the project to redo the fields that are built on, so that we're not losing fields.
Apparently George didn't perambulate the borders while he was there.
Yeah, evidently I did not. If I knew you were coming back, I would have.
Ms. Byers, did you have a question?
Yes. What would be the next steps to continue to research and find the lease for property that the regional school is situated on, so that all of that property?
Well, we can identify the land the school is on. We had deeds that identify that.
But the entire parcel that we're talking about that would impact
Well,
the
there are
building
4 separate
project, what would be the
parcels.
next steps to continue to find that?
Well,
That
I
might
would believe it would be the Nancy getting a hold of MSBA with that one parcel and making sure that that's where we're looking at building.
As long as the proposal to use that area, that particular lot is acceptable to MSBA, it solves the building problem. It doesn't solve my problem. I still have to find out.
But that solves
Where that
any
came
lease
from.
issue.
Yeah, makes sense.
and
Makes
any
perfect
place
sense.
we're putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter to us.
Right.
I think what Dawn was asking is how do we resolve the problem that you have with the deed? I realize we're trying to skirt it, but
That's,
how do we fix that?
but the problem with the deed is you're looking at the baseball, softball fields, which are not within this scope here, okay, that they have to find the deed for.
Correct. So we have a town attorney, is that correct?
We do.
Just going to the registry of deeds would probably go a long way.
I don't want to minimize this. I've had the assessor working on this both at the registry of deeds and at the town hall for the last 3 weeks. If it were that simple, I would have an answer now.
Okay, I just want to make sure people were going to that avenue as well.
But that's a separate quote-unquote issue that is unrelated to our school project.
But is it truly unrelated if we're saying, hey, it's much easier if we just do it this way because of this problem that we have over here, instead of doing it the best way, which might necessitate solving the problem before making the decision?
While we haven't made a decision, everything that we've seen that is the best way of doing it is what we're describing right now. That's why these gentlemen had no idea coming into this that we were going to be discussing this, but yet that's been done already. Okay, and that does not impact that softball field or baseball field.
So I think then my follow-up question is, are there implications of the lost deed that will come back not so far down the road, like, can we use this land for fields? Can we use this land for a snack shack? Can we use this land for anything? I mean, if we have a lost deed, I don't presume to know what any of this means, but it just seems like it is a very interrelated problem and not necessarily a separate problem.
Sure.
It is interrelated in the sense that we have that whole parcel, which is made up of 4 distinct parcels that we use and we know as the middle school parcel. However, the construction of the building and the reclamation of the space that's in front of the building for school use is not an issue. And so far as I know, the use of the fields as they sit today is not a use.
Correct.
Unless someone pops up and says, that's my grandfather's land.
Right.
Which is not likely to happen.
Right.
That's exactly what we're trying to solve.
But
Yeah.
that's a problem the town has to solve. That's not a school problem.
We're
It
trying
has-
to do the same
But the
thing.
school is going to be built in the town.
Yeah.
This school is not going to be built on that property.
We don't-
which is hopefully true and a great relief to all involved. However, abutting the school building are fields and grounds that the school will need to have access to.
That makes sense.
I agree.
As well as the town.
As well as the athletic groups in the town and other community groups.
I agree. I don't know how better to state it, except that we're
Right, I got it.
working on the process.
Right, so if in a big picture, if you look at that cone, right there, if you were to drop the school, put it behind, redo all the school, then whatever takes place can still be worked out that towns have town fields, schools have usage,
Right.
we go forward together in this relationship we've had 50 years, and we move forward.
Correct.
Ballpark, I mean, that's the ballpark we're talking about.
The scope of the deed isn't going to affect the size of the school.
Right.
So the school we
Right.
want can still fit in the scope, correct? Of what we.
Correct.
Okay. That's, I think that's a concern.
Vested interest to resolve that.
Right, no, I get it.
Resolve this.
Right, I get it. No, yeah. Right. So the only issue that we may have, if I just look at this scope though, is the possibility of one of those, and this is just ballpark, is one of those additions to the existing school where we have to jut out to the right, which is like that new wing.
Right.
See, this isn't the parcel though, so.
Oh, okay. See, that's what I think. That's what.
Yeah, people are trying to see.
So that's what I think people get thrown off on.
The parcel actually starts here,
Okay.
goes all the way over to the edge,
Right.
and then up and back to probably slightly beyond the tree line. What
Okay.
this alleviates is MSBA's restrictions.
Correct.
Having
Okay.
to turn over all our town
Right.
fields to the school.
Right. So if I look at the school now where that fence is and there's that path to Highland or whatever, that's still all part of the parcel.
As
So
part
if
of the
the,
parcel
so if the
we
new,
are using.
okay, that makes sense. And then that alleviates the issue with who owns, who leases, who does this, the 50 years and all that stuff.
And no matter what, today, tomorrow, there is also, you have that existing condition that they're looking for the deed.
Correct.
Nothing changed.
Right, so the snack shack could be built on the other side if grandpa doesn't come out.
There's another interesting
Yeah.
question to this. Those fields were built in a school renovation back in 2000.
Yeah, they were redone, correct.
I can't imagine that we wouldn't have had to look at those issues back then. Unfortunately, I have been unable to resurrect.
Brian O'Connell.
Don't go there.
That's why I'm saying.
Right. No, it makes sense, makes perfect sense.
I was chair of recreation when we were.
We haven't stopped looking.
No, right.
Just for the sake of this meeting, I'm here telling you that
Right.
we do have a resolution.
Yeah, it makes sense.
For the MSBA concerned about leasing the entire parcel.
Right, so it solves that issue
Yep.
where you get complete control of a
Yep.
parcel. And then through the same lease
Yep.
we've had for 30 years,
Yep.
we do that, it's
Yep.
been a great working relationship. We lease out the fields
Yep.
and
Yeah,
keep
understood.
going the way we always
Yeah,
have been.
absolutely.
but To meet that simple guideline
Right.
of complete ownership.
Right.
We give you the parcel.
Right. Makes sense.
Right, double the rent.
On the town, right?
Yeah, on the town, right.
0-0.
Yeah. So I think in a perfect world, an overlay of what that parcel
Yes.
really looked like
We have to show
would
these
then
guys.
be the piece that could help alleviate some of it. Like if that overlay was that. Yeah, makes perfect. Yep.
Couple more and then we're gonna move on. Ms. Bias?
Yeah, I was just remembering back in the summer that there was a discussion that MSBA needed to have some language updated or changed in regards to the lease. So I was wondering, and thank you, Mr. Lamartina, for explaining that this now sort of alleviates that because we can't find two deeds that are the two properties.
That's not what was said.
It now appears that
It has nothing to do with not finding the deeds. It has to do with being able to have a particular parcel that can be allocated to the school only,
Makes sense.
okay, that alleviates the concern, because now instead of it being a combination of 4 parcels, it's 1 parcel.
Okay.
That's that's what's accomplished.
But when we find those other deeds, then the entire parcel could be written as a lease.
It's not going to change. It's going to stay the same, with the exception of the other parcels will have an independent lease to the district, independent of the middle school, allowing the district to have use of the fields during school hours.
Independent of the MSBA.
Correct. Independent of the MSBA, which
So
is
by default, this, not having two deeds allows the town to maintain control of
well,
fields.
it's nothing to do with not having the deeds. It's just
But
being
that is
able
what
to
it sounds
identify that one parcel.
Let's not lose sight of what's at issue here. Whether we have the deed or not, that parcel is problematic to moving forward with the project, as I understand it. The willingness of the town to include all of the fields in the lease was an issue to begin with. And that issue would not have gone away if I could tell you that book 2022, page 210, has that parcel. You still would have the issue of the town's, I guess, for lack of a better word, willingness to encompass the entire layout.
Beyond school hours.
Without proof of ownership, even during school hours, you can't lease something you can't prove you own. So we would need that page of that book no matter what. So during school hours or beyond, unless we can.
We're gonna leave this to attorneys.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, the attorneys are gonna square this away.
There is undisputed ownership of the parcel that
We're talking about building a school. Period.
Thank you.
And that's the important part. That's what matters.
Makes sense.
Anyways, thank you all for indulging, Troy. Thank you.
No problem at all. So we've got a lot of information to go through tonight, about 70 slides. Is it okay about midnight?
1 a.m.
In all seriousness,
Red Sox are done, so it doesn't matter.
we're going to move through the slides fairly quickly and pause in some areas which make sense. If at any point in time we're moving too quickly, please let us know, ask a question, or ask us to slow down. But the interest of time and everybody's bandwidth will move fairly quickly. So I'm going to ask Julie first to go through the first few slides.
Yep.
We have some,
Yeah, I was going to comment on the schedule, but I think John did a good job of sort of giving us a rundown of what we're coming up on and what we're looking towards in the future. So this is where we are. We're coming close to that October 21st PDP submission, as he mentioned. What we'd just like to emphasize is that we did have our first community forum, and Troy and I found it to be very useful for us, especially in terms of just the conversation on continuing to get information out to the community and some of the methods that we can use to do that. And then we're right on track with our PDP submission, and we've submitted a lot of those report drafts to the committee already, and so that October 4th draft will have all of those reports assembled in a complete package that everyone can review. That'll also include a full draft of the ED program that the district has been working on.
Okay. Two things. You guys all should have the entire package in front of you, so follow along if you cannot see. Also, second, I'd like to also note a little bit later in the presentation, you guys know Julie, but we also have Ashley here. She's a principal at Traverse Landscape Architects, one of our many consultants on the project. She'll be talking with Julie and myself through the process of the individual options. So we've been working with the administration. The administration has been diligently working on many hours on the educational program narrative. So if you all recall, we have the existing conditions analysis, the program narrative, and also the space summaries that will primarily make up the PDP submission. This is the highlights of the program narrative, and so you can see the many components of the report and the 50, 60-page document that describes the program. Support interdisciplinary instruction, authentic hands-on project-based learning within grade-level neighborhoods by providing specific application space and adjacent to flexible classrooms, allowing for independent or group work with students and disciplines, a facility that accommodates flexibility and adaptability, create environments to support social, emotional wellness and learning, a highly collaborative environment for teachers, making sure there's teacher planning and collaboration space, connecting technology and spatial planning in a very meaningful and intentional ways to foster innovation in teaching and also learning and leadership, a safe and secure environment, connection to the outdoors we've talked about during the visioning sessions, and promote a school of community culture that creates space that promotes and exhibits student work, community history, and community pride, and then create branding and school identity strategies that reinforce the desired sense of school community, and then enhance, support, strengthen connections and partnerships that make Whitman Middle School unique and vibrant. And just a point of note that the PDP submission, and it's really important to note because it's going to be a discussion in the next few months, which is either 6th grade through 8th or 5th grade through 8th grade structure, and then auditorium or cafetorium. Those two components we'll talk through. It's written, the document is written to explain both, and we'll have further discussions over the next several months to identify, just prior to PSR submission in March, whether it's going to be a 5-8 or a 6-8 grade structure, and whether it will have an auditorium or a cafetorium. So we'll catch up in a second. Here we go.
So because all of those aspects are specific to Whitman Middle School, there is some deviations in the space summary from the MSBA guidelines. We've talked about that in previous meetings. And the MSBA recognizes that these examples of spaces, like small group spaces, collaboration, wellness spaces, those are essential for a 21st century middle school environment, even though they might not have them prescribed specifically in their space summaries. So it's not unusual that we're including these. We just wanted to make that clear. And then some specific examples. So looking at some of those categories, like the core academic spaces and the special education category, there are specifics, I guess, spaces specific to the Whitman Middle School curriculum and programs that are already set in place. So we've talked a little bit about, for example, there's already foreign language at the middle school, so we would want to continue to replicate that program in any new project. There's a lot of the Therapeutic Learning Center within special education, so we want to replicate that. And then in the bubble diagrams, we're starting to look at what an entire wing that includes these spaces or these ingredients, as the chairman mentioned, how these are all coming together. And so it's starting to make sense of, okay, this is why we need this many collaboration spaces. So those square footages are really what's informing some of the program adjacencies and those deviations. And then looking at a breakdown per category, we've seen this before for a 6 through 8 new construction. For example, again, some of those differences between art and music is a little bit higher than what the MSBA recognizes, and that's because, again, we're trying to replicate program that exists in the current curriculum for the middle school. Similarly, like the health and PE portion of the categories, Whitman Middle School has that great turf gym, and so we're looking to replicate an area similar to that. So some of those categories are being bumped up a little bit because we're not looking to take everything away and water it down, and we're just looking to replicate some of those existing programs. And so that kind of brings, you're seeing at the bottom here, for example, we're at a 19% difference between the MSBA recommendations and a new construction, for example. We're still continuing to refine that grossing factor as we move on, but again, the MSBA recognizes that deviations will occur, and it's not unusual for there to be a difference between 15 to 25%. We've gone through the space summaries in the past meetings. We just have another sample here to, if anyone wanted to go back and sort of look over where those deviations that are listed comes from for this example.
And we say deviations because it is a little bit different than the baseline guidelines. But as Julie said, every project, virtually every project, has differences than the MSBA standards.
Just a quick question. Just because we're deviating from what the MSBA guideline is, that doesn't mean that MSBA necessarily will not reimburse for it.
Correct.
Is that correct? So, like, for instance, we have 2 music rooms and the MSBA guideline is only for 1, but because we have 2 now, they will look at that and, same thing with like our gymnasium and our wellness center, where we have a wellness center now, even though it's not in their guideline. Possibility exists that they will look at it and say, oh, you have one now, so we will include that in the reimbursement.
That's right.
That is correct.
That's right. So you've seen this comparison before. As we talk about the analysis of existing floor plans based on the MSBA guidelines, what you see are all the spaces in red are non-compliant, meaning they're less than square footage of the MSBA guidelines. The spaces in green are either on or larger than the MSBA guidelines. And one of the questions that was asked at a previous meeting was, what about the differences between addition renovation versus new construction, and the efficiency of a new construction and the inefficiency of renovating an existing building? And we know based on just the prior slide that all the classroom wing is the spaces are less than, smaller than the MSBA guidelines. So we'd have to restructure that wing to accommodate the guideline square footages. And also incorporate the educational visioning and the educational program narrative and the concepts of 21st century middle school learning spaces. So you can see here where this is the existing layout on the left-hand side. And if we just do a simple overlay of how to divide that up into classrooms that are appropriately sized with small group spaces, reading resource spaces, and then restructuring, in this case, restructuring the stairwell because it's too narrow and it's not code compliant. You can see how some of these square footages are larger than the MSBA requirements, and some are significantly larger because of the restructuring of the existing space that would be necessary. So that's where some of the inefficiencies come from, and that's why when we look at the total square footage, the gross square footage of an ad reno building versus new construction, there's going to be some differences and there's going to be inefficiencies in the overall building layout. And this in an ad reno scenario, this just demonstrates that point where we are higher than, as far as overall square footage and percent over the MSBA guidelines for the middle school by some percentage points, and it reflects in the entire document as well as the individual categories and the overall gross square footage. This is, we put these in here for reference, but every single option that you see, we've gone through and developed a space summary for each of the options, ad reno and new construction. We won't bog down into the details of the actual spreadsheet. And then you have seen this. This is one that was presented a few weeks back related to several of the most recent middle school projects in the Commonwealth that have been constructed, and how the MSBA approved size relates to the MSBA guidelines, and the overage as far as percentage and gross square footage per student. And you can see as an average, it's about 14.7%, where there's a range 27, 20, 29 to some that are right on the MSBA square footage. So you can see it varies by district considerably. So as we look through the evolution and the options, all the options that we're talking about, we first want to start by talking a little bit about the construction market and analysis of construction costs, because that is a really important point to make, and a reference point to what's happening in the market over the last several years. This analysis, this chart, can be viewed on the MSBA's website. It's updated on a regular basis. It identifies all the projects, in this particular case, all the projects in the core program, and it's by year. And then you can see a couple of highlights here. The first is the MSBA funding, this green line that goes up and plateaus, goes up and plateaus. Right now, the MSBA funding limit per square foot is $360 a square foot. That was just recently increased this past June. Previously increased 1 year prior, 2021. And then you can see this as the average, the orange line moving up the screen, the average construction cost for all the core program projects. And so by year, this projects out to 2024, which is approximately the projected time that you would go out to bid. So we're looking specifically at this area of the matrix and the cost construction chart. So if we move to the next slide, you can see those projects. What's happening with the projects that are currently listed on here as comparable peer projects in the pipeline right now. And on average, the cost, if you take the timeline, the cost average of each is $634 per square foot construction cost. Then if we compare apples to apples to 2024, these first few are in 2024, midpoint in 2024, so those don't have an escalation factor applied to it. But our cost estimators are estimating between 6 and 8% right now annually for construction cost escalation. And if you apply that to projects that are ahead of us in the pipeline, then this escalation column on average will be just about $650, $660 a square foot for construction costs. That's not total project cost, it's construction costs. So it gives you perspective on what's happening in the school market over the past few years. If I go back one slide, you can see the trajectory on what's happening, and everybody has, whether you buy something at Home Depot, or you're constructing an addition on your house, or constructing a school, the construction costs are increasing and have been over the last few years considerably. So if we look at the options, we look at all the options that we've been looking and reviewing with you over the last month or so. We have the base repair option. That's required by the MSBA as a baseline. What is base repair? It's just code required upgrades, system repairs, exterior repairs, interior repairs. No site work, no educational upgrades, no technology. That's just the base code requirements. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. The Renovation Edition, those are renovations that are considerable. However, they also have inherent challenges based on use of existing building. And so these options 2, 3, 6, and 7 we'll see are ad reno for 6-8 and 5-8 options, and then new construction are completely new building that complies with the space standards, complies with the educational space summary, the narrative, the visioning, and the future building for the next 50 years plus. And outlined in a different format, you'll see, I want to just point out this addition here. You've seen this slide before, however, we added 5B and also 9B. And those specifically look at the same population, enrollment, the same square footage as 9A and 5A respectively, but it looks at a 3-story scheme in lieu of a 2-story scheme, and we'll see what that how that plays out in the options in just a moment.
So jumping into the options, a review of the option itself and then the cost. So we're calling it option 1, but that is the base repair code upgrade option. As Troy mentioned, MSBA does require it for any of the feasibility studies, so that's why we're carrying that in this analysis. But it's only code required upgrades to the existing middle school, so it's not addressing any of those educational deficiencies or the natural daylighting, the lack of it, any of the indoor environmental quality standards, for organization of the existing. The site is also unaffected, and then it extends the disruption really of construction with phased occupied. And so for that total amount, our estimated total project cost for base repair alone would be close to $57 million, and that's assuming across a 3-year period. That's without accounting for any modular classrooms. Let's say there was to be a large enough base repair that we need to move students out, that would be an additional cost. And so without getting anything resolved educationally, just sort of the bones of the building, nearly $57 million, and that would be close to 100% funded by the district itself.
I just want to point out too that all of these costs, PM&C is our cost estimator, third-party cost estimator, that provided us with all of these values that were based on all the documentation that's provided thus far, and also their historical knowledge and knowledge of the current market throughout the Commonwealth. Not only our projects, but many other districts' projects. So if we move to the evaluation options for ad reno.
We'll go quick over these bubble diagrams just to jog a memory of what all of these options are, but some of the takeaways for this option 2A, which is an addition renovation for grades 6 through 8, no auditorium, and it would be 2 stories. The items here particularly is this addition of an academic wing perpendicular to that classroom wing. As a result, it sort of create this collaboration area at the intersection of those wings. A lot of the major spaces like student dining, the gymnasium, media center, those would all stay in place. So during any phasing, the students could continue to use those spaces. And then we propose removing the 2001 addition with the administration suite to sort of reface the existing building.
So now we're going to ask Ashley.
Hi everyone, Ashley, I'm landscape architect, principal of Traverse Landscape Architects. Our role in the project in the beginning phases is to work on the existing conditions analysis and understand the build constraints of the site as well as some of the environmental constraints. So the first piece of these plans, just very quickly, I like to refer to as test fits. We are overlaying environmental constraints like your wetlands, your buffers, any sort of flood zones. Then we're looking at your build conditions, which would include your building, your field. And then we're overlaying program elements that we know you need, like bus drop-off, car queue, parking. And then on top of that, we overlay the ad renos or a new building, and we basically look at the site and say, can we fit, make this fit, and can this function? So as we continue moving through, we will continue to refine these, but at this moment, this is a good idea of how all these things could look and function together. So first, this add renovation, you'll notice that we do like to keep consistency on all these sites because that gives you apples to apples looking at every single site plan, and you will see quite a few. So on each plan, you'll see at least 150 parking spaces. We're maintaining all 8 fields, half basketball court, stacking for at least 9 buses, and then maintaining what at least your current car queue is, and then hopefully some of the options, extending that as well. We're also solving for things like bus car complex, trying to create and optimize pedestrian connectivity around the site, connections to outdoor learning spaces, fields, and then community access to fields as well. So this will be consistent through each option you see. This is the first where you have the add reno. You'll notice we've broken apart the bus and car drop-off to create a more optimized situation that doesn't have to be managed as heavily, and the fields stay pretty much in a similar location as they are today. You have emergency access around the site, and you still have hardscape play as well. And as we go through, we're going to go through pretty quickly, but if there's more to add or questions, just ask.
So just a snapshot of a potential conceptual phasing scheme here. You can see this option includes the addition first on the right-hand side of the academic wing. It includes also modular classrooms because in a 6A option, the movement of students would be challenging just because you're not adding significant space, but meaning you can't move management students and open up free area and construct as you move through the building. So 6 modular classrooms would need to be constructed, and then you move through the second phase, which includes the left-hand side, the common spaces, the student dining, and the music area. And then, so the total, once the project is done, the total duration is about 42 months. So you're looking at 3.5 years of construction within this particular phase. And if we look at the cost of this option, including $2.1 million in modular classrooms, the estimated construction cost is about $86 million, 86.3. The soft cost then, modular construction, is about $110 million overall, which equates to approximately $56 to $62 million as the town share. And then you can see on all of the remaining options, addition renovation and also the new construction, you'll see that we have broken out the 4 line items on the bottom. If the first is an ad for CM at risk. So we'll be talking about this at a later date. However, I just want to note that this inherently adds cost to the overall project. It is not included within the base numbers now. This is based on design, bid, build, construction approach. If the district decides to go with the CM at risk, there will be an added cost to that. We also broke out the potential renovation of the 2 baseball fields, the 2 softball fields. You can see respectively about $1.2 million for the 2 baseball, $1.2 million for the softball fields, and then also the town soccer field completely renovating that soccer field for about $600,000. So those will be consistent, except for the CM at risk. The remaining 3 will be consistent throughout each of these options.
For option 3A, which is an addition renovation for grades 6 through 8, but with an auditorium, still 2 stories, very much like the previous option with the same academic addition. The change here would be that we are proposing that corner of the building, which currently houses the science and art classrooms, would be removed and replaced with a auditorium form, something that would house an auditorium as well as some of the arts classrooms and admin and guidance, as we propose to remove the admin that's currently in place. And so this would have a lot of the same benefits with the collaborative spaces and then the addition of the staircases at either end.
This site plan is very similar to one you just saw previously. All 8 fields are maintained in place where they're located today. We're optimizing some of the car and bus circulation. You can see 2 totally separate drop-offs, which create much cleaner pedestrian connectivity to the fields, 2 parking areas, still replicating all the parking and necessary buses and car queues.
With the phasing, you can see the addition of the auditorium. Very similar phasing, however, it adds a couple months based on the added square footage of the auditorium. So about 44 months total. And then if you look at the cost of that, construction cost is estimated about $92.4 million with a total project cost of about $117.6 million. And then the CMR would be about $4.6 million.
Option 6A, an addition renovation, but this time for grades 5 through 8. No auditorium, still 2 stories. Similar addition of an academic wing proposed, but this would be parallel to the existing. And then, of course, where those 2 sort of intersect, we're proposing some project labs and collaboration spaces. Again, a lot of those main spaces like student dining and the gym and the media center remain where they are. Of course, they'd all be renovated. And then in this instance, we've maintained all of the existing square footage by keeping all of the additions already in place, and we'd just be proposing renovating the remainder of the school.
And again, this site scheme is pretty similar, maintaining all fields in place. We are, I would say, taking site circulation to another level, trying to extend the bus queue, get it to wrap around the building a little bit, maybe take advantage of utilizing some of the bus drop-off as hardscape play. Also maintaining all the parking we have on site and then exploring better options for connectivity in terms of walking paths and green space.
And if we look at the phasing here, the 5/8 option does not require the modular classroom just because we would be constructing a larger 2-story addition to accommodate the 5th grade when the building is complete to transition up to the middle school. In this case, it's about a 46-month construction duration for all the building phases and site phases with a total of, like I said, 46 months. If we look at the cost, we're looking at about a $97.2 million construction cost and $121.5 million estimated project cost.
7A is an addition renovation for grades 5 through 8, except with an auditorium. It would have a very similar addition of the academic wing, but we'd expand that center where it intersects the adjacent academic wing and actually place the media center there, so to create kind of this ed hub space right in the center of the academic wings. That would allow us to demolish the existing admin suite and move that into the existing media center space along with a student resource center. And then we propose a similar addition like option 3A, I think it was, which would remove that corner of the building and create this sort of new arts wing with an auditorium.
And again, this next site option, extremely similar to what you saw before, replicating all these program elements we need, parking and fields and bus and car drop-offs. And also, we're not speaking about this, but it's really inherent in all these designs, looking at outdoor educational spaces, outdoor places to eat, great connectivity in terms of pathways and connections, and really taking advantage of any sort of outdoor learning opportunities like wetlands that we possibly can. And we'll get into much greater detail at a different time.
Yeah, and the addition of the auditorium in this particular scheme, going from 46 to 48 months, about 4 years of phasing for this particular option, both building and site. And if you look at the cost reflection, it's about $103.4 million estimated construction cost and $129.25 million estimated total project cost. So if we look at the new construction options,
Option 4A for grades 6 through 8, no auditorium. This would be entirely 2 stories as well. So our main sort of deriving of the form here is these 2 academic wings that are each 2 stories, and those sort of intersect at this public spine, which takes on sort of an angled shape as a result of just working around the existing building. We do think that would sort of create a really interesting approach from the site, but that would allow you to have the gymnasium and the student dining sort of anchoring this public spine, and then allowing for a little bit more privacy for the academic wings, and then where those intersect, a common theme throughout all of these would be where the academics intersect. There's a lot of collaboration space, and of course plenty of space for outdoor classrooms, as Ashley will note.
So in these new construction options, we actually start to see a lot of different opportunities that maybe we hadn't before. So you'll notice in some of these upcoming options, we will have to relocate one of those fields, but what that does is open up this really great opportunity to consolidate fields, consolidate them near parking, and create this really special entry approach into the site, which I think is really distinct. We're also just inherently, by pushing the building back, you're getting a much, much larger car queue, pretty much double what you have today, as well as a really clean bus drop-off as well. Still maintain great connectivity to these fields, and then you're able to take advantage of some of this proximity to the wetland with outdoor classrooms and walking paths.
The phasing for new construction, you'll see this consistently throughout all the new construction. It is much more simplified as far as the number of phases, where the construction of the new building behind the existing building in this case, and completion of the new building. Students move from the existing to the new building, then the existing building is demolished, remaining site is constructed, and this particular option would be about 28 months total for the phasing duration, the project duration. And the anticipated cost for 6-8 option, no auditorium, is about $77.1 million construction cost, and then about $96.3 million of total project cost.
Option 5A for new construction, grades 6 through 8 with an auditorium. This would be a 2-story proposal. This option takes the student dining and places it right at the center of the school as a common space, and then the academic wing sort of radiated off of that towards the wetlands, and then another sort of public spine on the front of the campus with the auditorium anchoring on one end and then the gymnasium on the other. This option would have one grade level on the second floor that would sort of step back from the first floor, and so that sort of lends itself to some opportunities outside, maybe some terracing off of the classroom wings.
Again, this option is really similar to the one you just saw before. We're able to consolidate fields to the front of the site, elongate some of these drop-offs, but then what I'd love to highlight is some of these opportunities for outdoor educational spaces, whatever they may become, outdoor seating areas and these great connections and outdoor classrooms that you currently don't have on site.
The phasing for this, approximately 28 months overall, 2 phases: construct a new building, and then demolish the existing building, continue the construction of the fields and the overall project. 18 months the first phase, and about 10 months for the remaining phase. And the cost of the 6-8 option with the auditorium construction cost is about $80.7 million, with a total project cost of just over $100 million.
8A new construction, now that we're getting into the 5-8 options, no auditorium here, and this would be 2 stories. And so similar to the first new construction option, we're proposing 2 academic wings that are oriented east-west, which is ideal for solar, and proximity is close to the wetlands, and then those meet at this, we're calling it a public spine, that's sort of anchored by either the gymnasium at one end and then the student dining at the other. the media center in between, and that sort of forms this main street, very much like what the existing middle schools used to have in. Obviously in a much cooler way.
This option's again really similar to what you saw before, but again you see this really beautiful entry approach with fields flanking both sides. By turning the field and reworking some of the circulation, you may actually have opportunity to enlarge one of the fields if that is something that's desired by the community. Really great elongated car queues, and then Troy, if you don't mind just highlighting some of the courtyard spaces, which I think are really special in some of these new Adreno versions, and then as well as the connectivity to the fields too is really fantastic.
Yeah. So looking at the 5-8 option, no auditorium, 2 stories, about 32 total months, 22 months for the construction of the new building, and then 10 months for the remaining demolition of the existing building and remaining site construction. And we'll look at the overall cost. Estimated construction cost about $87.1 million, and estimated total project cost of about $108.875 million.
For 9A new construction, grades 5 through 8, with an auditorium, this one, similar to the previous, it takes more of a formal approach, which is parallel to the entry of the campus. Same idea with these academic wings, and then the public spine, meeting at the public spine. The difference here being we've taken student dining and really made that center point with all of the other spaces radiating off of it. And then we are proposing a bridge that could go across at the rear of the building to connect those academic wings, and then it could also provide a lot of opportunities for just visual connections to the weapons.
So similar advantages to this site program as well. Nice field space in the front. You can also note some of the parking areas are really centralized to those fields, which I think is great for the school, but also great on off-school use too, especially for the community. Walking paths around, really great courtyards and outdoor eating spaces connected to potentially outdoor dining, great connectivity from the gymnasium. And then again, parking next to the fields, the 4 ball fields still remains exactly the same. I don't think I noted that in the last diagrams, but those have remained consistent throughout. And overall, a really coherent site plan.
Estimated construction phasing about 32 months, construction of the building about 22 months, and then the remaining demolition and site area about 10 months. So if we look at the cost, the construction cost estimated about $91 million, and the overall total project cost at about $113.75 million.
So this is the first of the 2 new 3-story options that we're sharing tonight. This would be 5B, which is a new construction for grades 6 through 8 with an auditorium. And the difference here is that, of course, a 3-story building allows us to build some of that program up instead of out. So here we're proposing that the gymnasium sort of takes the place of one of those academic wings, which would allow the building footprint itself to sort of scrunch in a little bit. And as a result, we have a more compact footprint that would save maybe, I think it was 15 to 20,000 square feet of the site. And then on the second floor, it would be 1 grade level per floor, so 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then you do see that there's sort of a minimal amount of program by the time you get to the 3rd floor. Not a bad thing. For something sort of a disadvantage might be that now some of the classrooms that had ease of going outside, maybe just going down 1 flight of stairs, now they might have to go down a couple flights of stairs. So a little bit less access to the outdoors during the day. But
if we look at the cost, and the overall exercise is intended to look at the efficiency. What's the efficiency of the same program from a 2-story building to a 3-story building? And so you can see the estimators identified with the constriction or the reduced footprint with the foundations, footings, and roof area, that in the added wall surface, exterior wall surface, it would overall be about a 10% savings if we look at apples-to-apples comparison of a 6.8 with auditorium 2-story versus 6.8 auditorium 3-story. You can see it's about $96.875 million for a total project cost and about $77 million for the construction cost. So there is some inherent value in going to 3 stories than 2 stories. And we did the same for the 5 through 8 option, 3 stories. And this.
Yeah, I think that just something to point out here is that we propose sort of building on top of the gymnasium, which is not unusual or impossible. It would just contribute to sort of tightening up that footprint.
Yeah, great.
Any particular reason why there isn't the option for 3 stories, no auditorium?
But just because we can look at any of them. 3 stories.
Curious. I mean, would that be the same impact?
Yeah. Yep. Same outcome. We just decided to do 1.68, 1.58. There was no real reference to an auditorium or no auditorium. It would apply throughout. I mean, the reference is there, but the application or the result would be applicable for each of the options.
And that will appear on the preliminary submittal?
All
the options?
All these options.
No, but you'll have them with and without auditorium and all the options. In other words, in the submittal itself, you have them with and without, not just with.
I think what we would intend to do is say that we took a test case of each of them, and this would apply throughout whichever option is selected and how the project evolves. If it evolves to a project without an auditorium, then that's the savings would still apply with a 3-story option. The intent here is just to show that there is a savings going with a 3-story option versus 2.
I know myself, I prefer to see it listed out in black and white or red and black.
We could sort of mention too that at this stage, the phase 1, the number of floors doesn't really make a difference, and we will explore it more in the next phase.
Just so the data is comparable.
Absolutely.
Sure. So you can see on the 5.8 option, same thing, 10% approximate savings between 2-story and 3-story options for that size of a building. So this is collecting everything together with a summary of all the base repair, the 4 add reno options, and then the next slide with the new construction options. And it's really, really important to point out here that this is a very conceptual phase. Like, this is not a situation where we're saying that's the one and that is the number. We're looking at all of these conceptually, and we're looking at them comparative to each other. These numbers are going to fluctuate. They're going to change. Even when we talk about programming, we talk about site development, we talk about finishes on the interior, all of those concepts. As the project evolves, this will change. This intended purpose is to draw a comparison, apples to apples comparison between options. And I can't stress that enough. Going into detail on any of those aspects, or what would the finishes be on this project or option, what's the finish on this, we haven't even thought about that at this point. It's more about what is the market doing, what is the historical data that PM&C, the cost estimators, have collected, and what are they seeing as they monitor the market and have projects that come in and bid in real time on a daily basis, or at least on a weekly or monthly basis. So that's the intended goal here. And then the next slide, you have a larger version of this. You can't see it on the slide here, but you have a larger version of this, which collects all of the information into one particular document. And when we get to the vote for PDP, one of the things that the MSBA requires is that the district pare these down So the next phase, we're not looking at 10 options. We're looking at 2 or 3 options. And so that might mean, as an example, 1 6-8 option. It may have an auditorium, it may not. 1 5-8 option. It may have an auditorium, it may not. And that doesn't mean you have to decide right now that it has an auditorium. As I mentioned, as we go through the next several months, we'll have lots of discussions about 5-8, 6-8 and auditorium, cafetorium, and whatever option is decided on for options for this next phase, we'll look through a myriad of floor plans, elevations, building organization, whether it has an option, an auditorium or no auditorium. So I say that because I don't want anybody to get bogged down in I want 3B because it has an auditorium, or I want 7B because it's 3 stories. We're going to be looking at a variety of configurations. It's just paring it down to something that is focused. So, with that, here's the overall upcoming actions and votes that we had started the discussion earlier. With October, as John mentioned earlier, the educational narrative, the educational programming narrative that the administration is working on, the plan is to submit the draft next week to the building committee on the 4th, to the building committee and the school committee, so that both groups can view it, can review, and provide comment. The vote on the 18th or the 11th for the submission of the PDP document to the MSBA. And then in November, we'll talk about enrollment options. We'll talk about the pros and cons of a 5A versus 6A. We'll continue that conversation, as well as the community forum on November 7th, presenting similar to this, a more condensed version of this, but showing the options and showing what has transpired since the last community forum. So the December, next month we'll also be talking about, as I mentioned, auditorium, cafetorium, gymatorium, where there'll actually be 3 different types of spaces we'll talk about. We'll have the 3rd community forum. We'll talk about grade configurations again, and the development of a few options that will be established at the submission of PDP. And then in January, we'll continue the conversation. Ultimately, when we get to the end of February, there will be a single option that is identified for the professional team and the committee to move forward into schematic design as a single project. And those decisions with vote coming in January relative to enrollment, relative to auditorium, cafetorium, and those are everybody understands those are the biggest pieces of the puzzle at this point. Any questions on upcoming votes, actions?
Question actually?
You bet.
Mr. Chairman, is that all right?
Yep.
Yeah. So 13 here, SBC decision to include auditorium, cafetorium. Why is that one just the SBC, not SC and SBC?
The
school committee and SBC are both voting on enrollment, but why aren't they both voting on the auditorium, cafetorium decision? Feels like that should be.
It can be. Typically, that is a building committee item, but it can be both. It is really up to the larger committee to decide. In this particular case, as far as enrollment, the school committee needs to vote on that specifically. Right.
Yes. Under Chapter 71, you're supposed to provide, I believe it is, the same provisions for each school. I think they talked about it with busing. We couldn't have non-busing for that. The middle school in Hanson has an auditorium. Would you be considering that when you're deciding whether or not to have an auditorium for this?
I don't believe that's going to be a consideration. as far as why or why not to
Make
have
it
an
public
auditorium.
and be part of this process.
That feels like it really should. They're able to
Yeah.
offer programs that we're not able to offer at in the middle if there's no auditorium.
Which
They have dedicated.
Yeah.
What exactly is
Already
being offered in
yeah.
Hanson Middle in the auditorium that can't be offered?
Is that
Theater, drama, performing arts.
having a dedicated center rather than one shared between
There's a school
performing arts
equities
centers?
between the two schools.
Well, that'll be a decision of the committee to,
In the
Make
CPAC, the
time
last
appropriate.
CPAC committee, I don't know if you have the minutes, but it talked about kids with disabilities and particularly autism and how important theater is for them for mimicking and doing things. And additionally, somebody had brought up that the grade levels, not going from the same as Hanson, were causing problems for children with disabilities to advance. And you'd have to talk to the chair, she brought that up. I do think that they should be part of this process because this actually does have a real world effect on children.
everything is taken into
I
consideration.
am concerned that a lot of this is shutting out the public. And I think these meetings should be later, I think it was talked about before, and we should be having more public voices because these are the.
Duly noted, thank you.
These are things you find out.
Why won't it be considered that Hanson Middle has one and it won't be considered for Whitman Middle?
I'm not saying it won't be considered in my mind for the reason of why, because Hanson has something, Whitman should have it. What will be considered is all proper educational opportunities for our kids, and we do that based upon the guidance of our administration.
Fred, can I? So when we put forward the educational plan, which is a mighty lengthy document, the folks can see the outline of what we looked at in our recommendations for both the 6 through 8 and a 5 through 8, spelled out in detail about the programming for both for our kids at Wood Middle to make sure it's equitable across the district. So it's in the plan. So next week when the committee gets it and for review and the school committee gets it for review and discussion, you'll see that the education plan covers both the 5 through 8 with an auditorium and without, and pros and cons of both from an educational perspective.
Okay, perfect.
So last slide. As mentioned previously, October 21st is the submission of the PDP to the MSBA, and then the Community Forum number 2, November 7th, 6:30 in the middle school cafeteria. And that is it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Draft promotional flyer for the November 7th community forum. I think we sort of touched on that. Does anyone have any comments, suggestions, questions on it?
Chair, can I just ask for a follow-up from the community forum that we have a population of non-English speaking families, so if that can be drafted in other
Yes.
languages,
Yep,
just
yep.
follow up on that.
And it'll be distributed like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, anything else on that? Invoices and invoice approvals. I believe everyone has in their package or seen pending invoices and what we need to approve for the Colliers and AI3. I will entertain a motion to approve these invoices as presented.
So
Okay, moved by Ms. Staff, second by Ms. Lamontina. All in favor?
Yeah, I got all
Unanimous.
She just said that.
Based on that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So when's the next meeting? Is it the 4th or the 11th?
The 11th.
The 11th. So the draft will go to the committee by
Draft will go
email?
to the committee on the 4th.
Perfect.
Next meeting's the 11th, 4:30 here.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning? That's unanimous. No one on that day. Thank you.